Hello and welcome back everyone. This video is going to be a slightly different take on my normal content, and it's going to be focusing on skill assignments and targeting the newer viewers and the newer players, thinking bronze, silver and a little bit of gold with a touch of plat at the end. And so what I mean by skill assignment is where you should be assigning skills and what situations. Now, just a small segue into gear. Gear obviously buffs a lot of your skills and will have a relative impact on where you want to put your skill assignment. So I just want to really quickly touch base on it. Between the seasonal bonus that you get in bronze, silver and gold and your gear, you ideally want to be hitting a 90% brave, which is the stat here, and a 90% fearless, which is the stat here. And so what I mean is when we go over to the season rewards, so the league information, in bronze we can see that we get a 50% base fearless and brave, and then in silver we get a 50% base, but once you go up to gold that turns into a 33% base, and then into plat it goes into a 1% base for fearless and brave. And that's quite important because it has a relatively large impact on your troop sustain or where you can assign your skill points. So with that in mind, when we jump over to our skill points, in any regular bronze, silver, gold or plat season, you get 1 skill point per level gained. That does change in diamond, which is why I've got 200 skill points here, but you can ignore that and just sort of, if you're in the lower leagues, just imagine I've got half the amount of skill points at the moment for my current level. Now, because I only get a base level of 1%, then that means I need to make up 89% in fearless and brave from my gear or skill points. So if you're in bronze or silver and you don't have the 90% from your gear, you need to make up an additional 49%. Then I suggest highly to put your first skill points into fearless so that you reach the 90% cap as fast as possible. Once you hit the 90% cap, do not go higher. You do definitely not need to go higher. Then start putting it into brave. And the reason I'm saying fearless first and brave second, if you don't have brave at 90%, when you go and close out the game at the end of the day, or when you're finished playing a session, I would highly recommend anyone less than 90% brave to just move all their troops back to their main city. After you've done your fearless and brave, it's highly recommended to get a little bit of striker. When you're in the lower seasons, you do not need any of the defensive boosts because the city walls and the buffs from the city walls will give you far more than your opponent's striker will ever give them. So therefore, you do not need to be focusing on defensive stats, and you probably don't want to be focusing on things like Scavenger because it's more a late game kind of skill, in the sense that when you've got very low, it doesn't give you much gold anyway. You're better off getting your gold through sustaining through attacking. And Scavenger can come purely from your gear. I don't recommend putting points into Scavenger. If you want Scavenger, just go more striker and you can earn more from being able to make more attacks. So I'd highly recommend bronze players for a decent while play around with having all your points in striker after you've reached the caps in fearless and brave. And then if you get a bit further along and you've found that you've been opening chests and you've got more fearless and brave and you've gone over the cap, you might go, I want to reset my skill points so that I can be more efficiently distributed into other stats. And I would suggest then maybe putting say 20 points into striker and then put some into your recruiter, and then only your recruiter so that you can get to rusher. I do recommend players in bronze to have a play around with putting points into rusher and just see what the gameplay feels like when you've got a bit of rusher. You don't really need much striker when you're in bronze, and having some rusher is it's a godsend for being able to make the game more fun and enjoyable because you just get places quicker, it's easier to defend. There's a lot of perks to having rusher in the early seasons, especially because a few points in rusher can be, if you get to 100% rusher versus the 0% you had previously, it's doubling your march speed, so it's highly worth playing around with it. But when in doubt, just focus on everything into striker after 90% fearless and brave. Then when you get into silver, you may find that you're hitting sort of 100 or 150% total striker, and then you could start putting your points into rusher on top of that. Coming up into gold, you end up getting that shift down from the the league giving you 50% bonus fearless and brave down to 33%. So just make sure when you're promoting into gold for the first time that you are still able to reach that cap. Ideally you want to be doing it from your gear, but there is situations where you won't be able to do it from your gear if you're free to play and it's literally your first season or your third season and you're already in gold, then you might not be able to get there. So yeah, do just recommend double check that when you promote into gold. I still recommend in gold season to stay away from Guardian. It does sound like it would be a good idea, but you want to sustain the momentum yourself in your own playtime, and the way you sustain momentum is through your striker and your rusher. If you're just sitting back and playing passively and wanting to wall people, which is when you defend the city and they are unable to attack it, then yeah, Guardian's good, but it's actually less common than how often you will be attacking. So even in gold, I would probably suggest staying away from Guardian. Most of the times in gold, you should have a decent amount of base rusher by then, so the strategy could just be to put all your skill points into striker. It's really only in the early days that it can be a huge benefit to go into some rusher. Then once you start getting your sort of 150 rusher, you may find just full striker opens up options for being able to attack higher level cities. If you have more striker, you can attack higher level cities, it gets you more XP faster, and then you level up faster, you get more troops, and it becomes a bit of a snowball effect. So higher striker is really good for progressing in the game quickly. Then once you've been battling all the way through all that and you get into plat season, that's when you start hitting some of the players who've been playing for a decent amount of time. You will find a few people who are staying behind in the silver and gold leagues, but it's actually kind of rare, and if you're a new player you might not run into them very much, and you can just avoid them. If you go, oh yeah, that player was way too strong for me, just move your main city somewhere else and just play against players of your own sort of newness. But once you get into plat, you are going to come across these players more and more often, and you're going to find yourself very hamstrung if you're sitting in full striker and you're trying to attack cities and they're just defending you, because they will start having quite a decent amount of Guardian at that point, and it's going to start hurting trying to attack cities if it's taking you a long time to march to them. So that's when I would suggest find a magic number that sort of works for you depending on how new you are to plat. If you've played a couple of seasons in plat, then you may be able to get, say, 300 striker as with all your skill points, well, with some skill points assigned. Once you get to 300, then I would suggest start looking at your rusher. If it's below the 300% rusher mark, you definitely want to be putting some skill points into your rusher, because you just become too vulnerable to being walled by an attack. And getting your rusher up to that sort of 500% means you can start sneaking cities off the older guys who have been around and have some decent base rusher. So it's just something to think about. Balancing that striker and rusher, it really opens up the door for long attacks. You can go to other islands and things like that. Okay, let's talk about Scavenger. A lot of players, especially when they're new, look at Scavenger. Don't get distracted by this being 3% at the moment. It's only because there's an event running. Normally it's 2% base. A lot of players, when they're new, get a bit distracted on Scavenger, thinking it's definitely going to offer them a huge gain and being able to level up their cities and grow faster. I think that's a misnomer, and you are almost always better off just putting your skill points into striker. Your troops will sustain longer, they more survive from their attacks. Because of how their attack defense calculation works, you will have a lot more survive if you have higher striker rate. So just to expand into that a little bit more, say you had 100 troops but you've got 200% striker, effectively means your total attack power is 300. And then if you're attacking a wall of 100, then the calculation will be, it takes the wall's defense power of 100 and then it runs a percentage based figure across your 300%, and then it will give you a total amount of troops killed, which will be, say, for a 1/3 ratio, it's probably talking you would lose 66 or something like that. I don't have the figure off the top of my head. And then you would then divide that by your striker amount to get the actual troops you just lost. So having a higher striker means you lose less troops. You can then do that attack again, and that means that you get Scavenger for a second attack using that exact same troop, which would have otherwise died in a previous attack. So that is why I suggest staying away from Scavenger. It's definitely, it looks good, but it's a sort of stat that most players will not put any skill points into unless they're having a play around with the build. Prosperous, never go near it. It's only at 6% at the moment because of an event on, but there's almost no scenario where Prosperous outweighs Recruiter. The only scenario would be very, very early days of a diamond season, but this video is not targeted at diamond players. So if you've got a piece of gear that's got Recruiter on it, just put the Recruiter on and make your gold through just attacking people. Guardian, as I said, early days, first three tiers of season up to gold, I wouldn't recommend putting points into Guardian. There will be some scenarios where you do want to wall someone in a quite a tactical city or something like that in Plat, and then it can be worth switching over to Guardian. But even in Plat, I would argue that you could benefit more, or at least equally, from having all the skill points you would put on Guardian into Russia and just get more troops to the city to defend, because it's only single skill points. The more troops you get to the city to defend, you get that bonus of the city walls. Just to demonstrate on this one, this 128 city gives all my troops in it a bonus of 384% Guardian. So that would be on top of the Guardian I have here. So we actually take the total troop count, then we times it by the base Guardian, which is in this case 313, and then we add on, or we would times it also by this number here, add the two together, and then add this number again, and that's how you get the total defense power. That was a complicated way of explaining it. I could definitely explain it better, but I'm doing this off the cuff. But long story short, you get good defense on the city walls, and so you're better off just getting more troops there and getting them buffed by this percent along with this percent, then putting more points into Guardian, because each point only gives you 3% bonus. So just get more troops there, you use less speed boost, and it gives you a benefit when you're attacking as well. So it means you have to use less points resetting. So I would argue in the leagues we're talking about that Russia outperforms Guardian in majority of scenarios. And Salvager is really good when you're in a defense sort of turtle stance or you've made cities, but it really only comes into play if you've managed to get that 50% base cautious. And if you don't have 50% base cautious, I don't recommend going for putting your points into cautious, because you've got to get through prosperous for 10 skill points and you're just running out of skill points. You only get one per level you want, 1 per percent you want in cautious anyway, so it's just not worth going for it. So only go for Scavenger once you got 50% cautious from your gear. Takes a while, you're definitely into the mid game, you should understand things a lot more by then, so just stay away from those ones for now would be my recommendation. Lastly, while we're just talking on recommendations, a lot of the times you see people in videos have their purple gear or their mythic gear on in their recruiter stat or in their Russia stat. It's really the only mythic gear that you do need to hold on to. There are scenarios where you might want to hold on to some of your mythic gear in your defense items, but that's pretty rare. But definitely don't go salvaging your mythic the L pieces, because they will come in handy down the line and you will need them. And other than that, I don't see any scenario. I definitely don't keep any pieces lower than legendary for my attacking set. I do hold on to a few of the in here, as I explained. There are some scenarios where you want to run some salvager gems and potentially some guardian gems in the exact same slot, and so you can look into that how you do. It's more a late game kind of thing, so yeah, if you need the dust, maybe just dust them. I won't go into gems for now. I think that about covers a whole heap of information. If you do have any questions on anything covered, or if you want me to answer a question on anything, just drop it in the comments and I'll do my best to answer all the comments with questions in them. If there are a stack of questions or some really paramount ones that need a bit more detail, I could make a Q&A video of those questions, so it just depends on how it goes. But yeah, one last thing, if you especially are not meeting the Fearless and Brave requirements from your gear, open every single chest as soon as you get it, because it's going to have a bit of an impact to you. Early days in bronze and silver, as you get huge leaps, if you say go up by like maybe 10 points in Fearless or Brave, then you might be starting to think it's time to do a skill reset and just be able to redistribute those points into some other things. When you do those skill resets, I recommend playing around with a little bit of Rusher at some point. Probably don't look at the Rusher until you're over level 50 or 60 in the actual season, and the reason for that is you just won't have enough skill points to put some on the 10 recruiter requirement up till then. Cool, hope this helps someone, and if it does, feel free to give me a like and subscribe. Okay guys, peace.